The ballroom doors swung open, and Simone saw her husband with a woman she had never met, holding a child. 10 years of trust shattered in an instant. Who was this child, and what had he been hiding all this time? Welcome back, my amazing family and friends. If you're ready to dive into this unforgettable story, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll bring you another incredible tale you absolutely can't miss. Let's get started, and don't forget to like and share to help our community grow. The mirror didn't lie, but tonight, Simone wished it would. She stood in the master suite of their Beacon Hill penthouse, her reflection fractured across 3 panels of the vintage vanity Julian had imported from Paris. The emerald gown hugged her curves like a second skin, the kind of dress that cost more than her mother's monthly pension. Her dark skin glowed against the jewel-toned silk, and the diamonds at her throat caught the light with every breath, each one a year of their marriage. 10 stones. 10 years. A decade of building something she'd thought was unshakable. Her fingers trembled as she fastened the final earring. You're overthinking again. Julian's voice drifted from the doorway, smooth as aged whiskey. She turned to find him adjusting his cufflinks, his tall frame filling the entrance with that effortless confidence that had first caught her attention at a Columbia Law School mixer 13 years ago. His sandy hair was touched with distinguished gray at the temples now, his blue eyes still sharp enough to read a courtroom or a balance sheet. Tonight, in his tailored tuxedo, he looked every inch the man who'd built Montgomery Capital from a single office into a private equity empire worth $300 million. I'm not overthinking, Simone said, forcing lightness into her tone. It's 10 years, Jules. It feels significant. He crossed the room in 3 strides, his hand settling on her waist with practiced ease. It is significant. Which is why I've planned tonight to be perfect. His lips brushed her temple. The ballroom at the Fairmont. 200 guests. Everyone who matters. Everyone who matters. The phrase lodged somewhere in her chest, sharp-edged. Your mother called again, Simone said quietly. She wanted to know if we'd reconsidered her suggestion about the foundation gala. Julian's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. My mother has opinions about everything. That's why I married you instead of letting her choose someone from her country club. It was meant to be a compliment, Simone knew. Julian had defied Catherine Montgomery's expectations when he brought home a black girl from Brooklyn whose father drove a bus and whose mother cleaned houses. He'd stood firm when Catherine had suggested, with that particular Boston Brahmin delicacy, that perhaps Simone wasn't quite the right fit for the Montgomery legacy. But 10 years later, Simone still felt like she was auditioning. I invited her anyway, Simone said. Tonight wouldn't feel right without family. Something flickered across Julian's face, too quick to name. Of course. That's one of the things I love about you. You're more gracious than any of them deserve. He kissed her then, thorough and claiming, and when he pulled back, his smile was the one that had convinced her to believe in fairy tales. Come on, Mrs. Montgomery. Our carriage awaits. The Fairmont's grand ballroom was a cathedral of old money and new ambition. Simone stepped through the entrance on Julian's arm, and the space opened before her like a jewelry box, vaulted ceilings dripping with chandeliers, marble floors polished to mirror shine, round tables dressed in cream silk and crowned with towers of white roses. A string quartet played near the terrace doors, their music weaving through conversations about summer houses and market trends. Simone. Julian. Trevor Ashford materialized from the crowd, his wife Bethany trailing behind in head-to-toe Chanel. Trevor was Julian's college roommate and current business partner, a man whose inherited fortune had cushioned every risk he'd ever taken. 10 years, Trevor said, pumping Julian's hand. Feels like yesterday you were a nervous wreck at the altar. I wasn't nervous, Julian corrected smoothly. I was impatient. Bethany air-kissed near Simone's cheeks, her smile sharp as cut glass. You look stunning, darling. That Valentino. Custom, Simone replied, because she'd learned that detail mattered in rooms like this. Well, you've always had exquisite taste. Bethany's gaze swept the ballroom with the practiced efficiency of a woman cataloging every detail for later dissection. Julian certainly spared no expense tonight. Must be nice to have such a generous husband. The words landed with the weight of old subtext. Bethany had never quite forgiven Simone for capturing what she'd once considered Trevor's consolation prize, Julian Montgomery, the scholarship kid who'd outlearned them all. It must be nice to have a husband at all, Simone said sweetly. How is Trevor's golf game these days? Bethany's smile froze. Julian squeezed Simone's hand, a warning or solidarity, she couldn't tell anymore, and steered them toward their table. The evening unfolded in familiar rhythms, champagne toasts and polite laughter, courses of food Simone barely tasted, speeches from Julian's associates about partnership and prosperity. She played her part flawlessly, smiled at the right moments, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, accepted congratulations from people who calculated her worth by her husband's portfolio. But beneath the practiced grace, unease coiled tight in her chest. It had started 3 weeks ago. Small things, easy to dismiss. Julian coming home later than usual, his explanations vague, late meetings, difficult clients, traffic on the pike. His phone face down on every surface, password changed without mention. The way he'd flinched when she'd picked up his iPad to check her email, then covered it with a joke about boring spreadsheets. Simone had told herself she was being paranoid. That 10 years of marriage had earned her trust. That Julian wasn't the type. But tonight, watching him work the room with that $1,000,000 smile, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was celebrating an anniversary with a stranger. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention." Julian stood at the front of the ballroom, microphone in hand, looking like he'd been born to command rooms full of Boston's elite. The conversations dimmed to murmurs, then silence. 10 years ago, Julian began, his voice carrying across the space with practiced ease, "I made the best decision of my life. I stood at an altar and promised forever to a woman who was completely out of my league." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. "Simone brought light into my world. She challenged me to be better than I was. She built a home while I built a business. She gave me." His voice caught, perfectly timed. "She gave me a reason to believe that some things are worth more than money." Applause swelled. Simone's smile felt carved from marble. "So tonight, I want to honor not just our decade together, but the decades ahead. Because Simone," he turned to her, eyes shining with what looked like genuine emotion, "you are my past, my present, and my future. Everything I have is yours." The ballroom erupted in applause. Someone called for a kiss. Julian crossed to her table, took her hand, and pulled her to her feet. His kiss was public and perfect, and when he pulled back, everyone was smiling. Everyone except the woman standing in the ballroom entrance. Simone saw her over Julian's shoulder, a flash of red dress and dark hair, a child's small hand clutched in hers. The woman's face was pale, her eyes locked on Julian with an intensity that made Simone's stomach drop. Julian must have felt her stiffen. He turned, following her gaze. And the color drained from his face like someone had opened a valve. The ballroom's noise seemed to compress into a single, crystalline moment of silence. Then the woman began walking toward them, her heels clicking against marble with the inevitability of a ticking clock. She was beautiful, Simone registered distantly. Delicate features, haunted eyes, a designer dress that had seen better days. And the child beside her, a little girl with sandy hair and blue eyes that were devastating mirrors of Julian's own. "Hello, Julian," the woman said when she reached them. Her voice shook, but her chin was lifted. "I'm sorry to crash your party. But we need to talk about your daughter." The champagne flute slipped from Simone's hand. It shattered against marble with a sound like her world breaking. The ballroom had gone silent, that terrible, suffocating quiet that preceded scandal. 200 guests stared at the tableau unfolding before them. Julian Montgomery, frozen like a statue, his wife, her face a mask of shock, and a strange woman in red with a child whose resemblance to their host was impossible to deny. "Security." Julian's voice cut through the silence, sharp and commanding. "We have an uninvited guest. Her name is Emma." The woman's voice rose, steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Emma Montgomery. She's 6 years old, and she's been asking about her father for 3 years." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Phones appeared like magic, cameras angling for the shot that would dominate Boston society pages by morning. Simone couldn't breathe. The emerald gown that had felt elegant minutes ago now constricted like a vice. She looked at the little girl, really looked at her, and saw Julian's eyes staring back. The same shade of blue. The same shape. The slight upturn at the outer corners that made him look perpetually amused. "This is insane," Julian said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't know this woman. This is clearly some kind of..." "Stop lying." The woman, Emma's mother, turned to face the crowd, and Simone saw desperation carved into every line of her face. "My name is Victoria Hartwell. 7 years ago, I was a paralegal at Whitmore and Associates. Julian and I had an affair that lasted 8 months. When I got pregnant, he paid me to disappear. That's defamation, Julian said, but sweat had appeared at his temples. Trevor, call our lawyers. I have proof. Victoria reached into her purse with shaking hands and pulled out a worn envelope. Bank transfers. Text messages. A letter you wrote when I told you I was keeping the baby. You said, her voice broke. You said you'd destroy my career if I ever contacted you again. The envelope fell open, photographs spilling across the pristine marble like evidence at a crime scene. Simone saw Julian's handwriting on cream stationery. Saw bank statements with Montgomery capital letterhead. Saw texts that made her stomach turn. Can't meet tonight. Wife getting suspicious. Told her I'm working late. Your place at 9? This has to end. You knew what this was. Jules. Simone's voice sounded foreign to her own ears. Tell me this isn't real. He turned to her, and for the first time in 10 years, she saw fear in his eyes. Real, raw fear. Simone, I can explain. Explain what? The words came out harder than she intended. Explain the child who has your eyes. Explain the affair. Explain which part, exactly. It was before we were serious, Julian said quickly, desperately. We'd been dating for a year, but we hadn't talked about marriage yet. It was a mistake, one mistake that I've regretted every day since. Before we were serious. Simone's laugh was sharp enough to cut. We'd been together for 3 years when this happened. I'd already moved to Boston for you. I'd already turned down the fellowship in Chicago because you said you wanted to build a life here. Together. The math was simple and devastating. If Emma was 6, she'd been conceived 7 years ago. Simone and Julian had been planning their engagement then, looking at rings, talking about the future. While he'd been sleeping with someone else. Mommy, I'm scared. Emma's small voice cut through the tension, and Simone's heart cracked despite everything. The little girl pressed against her mother's legs, overwhelmed by the crowd and the cameras and the weight of adult sins she couldn't understand. It's okay, baby, Victoria whispered, stroking her daughter's hair. Then she looked at Simone with something like apology. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this here, in front of everyone. But I'm out of options. Out of options. Julian's voice hardened, the fear evaporating into something colder. What do you want? More money? I've been sending checks every month. The checks stopped 6 months ago. Victoria's composure cracked. I've called. I've emailed. Your lawyer sent me a cease and desist threatening legal action if I didn't discontinue harassment. I lost my apartment. We've been staying in a motel in Dorchester, and Emma needs, her voice broke. She needs her father. Or at least, she needs him to keep his promises. Simone watched Julian's face cycle through calculations, damage control, legal exposure, reputation management. The same expression he wore when navigating hostile acquisitions. He was treating his daughter like a business problem. We should discuss this privately, Julian said, smoothing his tuxedo with hands that only slightly trembled. This isn't the time or place. When would be the right time? Victoria's voice rose. When you finally answer your phone. When your lawyers stop threatening me. I tried playing by your rules. I stayed silent. I took the money and disappeared like you wanted. But you changed the rules, Julian. You cut us off and expected us to just vanish. Catherine Montgomery appeared at the edge of Simone's vision, her face carved from marble disapproval. Other guests were whispering now, phones held high, capturing every moment of the Montgomery family's implosion for posterity. This would be everywhere by morning. The society pages. The business news. Maybe even national media, if the story was salacious enough. Montgomery Capital CEO's secret love child crashes anniversary party. The headline wrote itself. Simone. Julian reached for her hand, but she stepped back like he'd burned her. Please. Let me handle this, and then we can talk. Just you and me. Handle this. Simone repeated. She looked at Emma again, really looked at her. The girl wore a dress that had been nice once but was now faded, her shoes scuffed and too small. Her hair needed cutting. Her eyes held the haunted look of a child who'd learned too young that the world wasn't safe. And suddenly, Simone wasn't thinking about her ruined anniversary or her humiliation in front of Boston's elite. She was thinking about her own childhood in Brooklyn, watching her mother work 3 jobs to keep them housed. Knowing what it felt like to need things you couldn't afford. To be invisible to people who mattered. How much did he give you? Simone asked Victoria quietly. Victoria blinked, surprised. What? When you got pregnant. How much did Julian pay you to disappear? A muscle jumped in Julian's jaw. Simone, this isn't. Answer the question. Simone's voice cut through his protest like ice. She was surprised by her own steadiness, by the cold clarity that had replaced the shock. Victoria swallowed hard. 250,000. Plus monthly support payments of 5,000. That's 60,000 a year, Simone said. For his daughter. His own child. She turned to Julian, and he flinched from whatever he saw in her face. You spent more than that on the wine cellar last year. You paid 100,000 for courtside Celtics tickets. You donated $500,000 to the Museum of Fine Arts for naming opportunity. It was complicated. It's not complicated. Simone's voice was soft, but it carried across the silent ballroom. You had a daughter. You paid the mother to disappear. You stopped paying when you thought you could get away with it. And tonight, on our anniversary, your daughter showed up to ask why her father abandoned her. She looked at Victoria, then at Emma, who was watching the exchange with wide, frightened eyes. I'm sorry this happened, Simone said to them both. I'm sorry that my husband, the word tasted like ash. I'm sorry that Julian did this to you. To all of us. Simone, wait, Julian grabbed her arm, panic cracking through his careful composure. Don't do this. Not here. We can fix this privately. We can. She pulled away from his grip, and the diamonds at her throat suddenly felt like a collar. 10 stones for 10 years of believing in a lie. There's nothing to fix, Julian. You fixed it 7 years ago when you paid her to disappear. You fixed it every month when you sent those checks. And you fixed it 6 months ago when you decided your daughter wasn't worth the investment anymore. That's not fair. Fair. The word came out sharp enough to draw blood. You want to talk about fair? In front of your 6-year-old daughter who's been sleeping in a motel. The crowd had gone silent again, everyone leaning forward like spectators at a gladiator match. Simone could feel their eyes on her, judging, calculating, already composing the story they'd tell over brunch tomorrow. Poor Simone. Such a humiliation. Did you see her face when that woman walked in? I always wondered if Julian had it in him. Those quiet ones always do. Catherine Montgomery pushed through the crowd, her expression ice-cold fury wrapped in Chanel. Julian, I want everyone out. Now. And get that woman removed before. Before what, Mrs. Montgomery? Victoria's voice held an edge of hysteria. Before more people see what your son really is? Before Emma asks any more questions about why her daddy doesn't want her? How dare you? How dare I? Victoria laughed, sharp and broken. I dared to believe Julian when he said he'd take care of us. I dared to think that a man worth $300 million would keep supporting his own child. I dared to hope, her voice cracked. I dared to hope that maybe, just once, someone would choose Emma. The little girl started crying then, soft, hopeless sobs that cut through the ballroom's elegant acoustics like a knife. And Simone felt something inside her chest shatter completely. She'd spent 10 years building a life with a man who'd hidden a child. 10 years sleeping beside someone who could look at his own daughter and see a problem to be managed, a mistake to be buried, a liability to be calculated and dismissed. How many other lies were there? How many other secrets? Who had she actually married? I need to leave, Simone said quietly. She wasn't talking to Julian or Catherine or the crowd. She was talking to herself, giving voice to the only truth that mattered. I need to leave right now. Simone, please, Julian's voice cracked. Don't walk away. Not like this. We can talk. We can work through this. 10 years. Remember? 10 years of marriage. That has to count for something. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a stranger wearing her husband's face. 10 years, she repeated softly. 7 of which you spent lying to me about your daughter. That counts for something too, Julian. Just not what you think. She turned toward the ballroom exit, her heels clicking against marble with the finality of a closing door. Behind her, she heard Julian calling her name, heard Catherine's sharp commands to security, heard the crowd's whispers rising like a tide. But she kept walking. And for the first time in 10 years, Simone Montgomery didn't look back. The November air hit Simone like a slap. She stood on the Fairmont's front steps, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts that clouded white in the cold. Behind her, the ballroom's warmth and light spilled through tall windows, a snow globe scene of elegance that now felt like a cage she'd barely escaped. Valets lingered near the entrance, their eyes carefully averted. They'd heard everything, of course. Everyone had. By morning, the story would be in every group chat, every coffee shop conversation, every whispered exchange in Boston's tight circles of power and privilege. Did you hear about Julian Montgomery? His wife found out at their anniversary party. In front of everyone. Simone's hand shook as she pulled out her phone. No coat. No purse. Just her phone, clutched like a lifeline, and the emerald dress that suddenly felt like costume jewelry, beautiful but worthless. She should call someone. Her mother. Her sister Jasmine. Someone who would tell her what to do, how to feel, what came next. But her fingers hovered over the screen, frozen. Because calling someone would make it real. Would force her to say the words out loud. My husband has a daughter he never told me about. My marriage is a lie. I don't know who I've been sleeping next to for 10 years. Mrs. Montgomery. Simone turned to find Victoria standing in the doorway, Emma still clinging to her hand. Up close, Victoria looked even more exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her red dress wrinkled from where Emma had pressed against it, her lipstick chewed off by nervous teeth. I'm sorry, Victoria said quickly. I know this is... God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I tried everything else first, I swear. Simone should hate this woman. Should blame her for destroying the anniversary, the marriage, the carefully constructed life that had taken a decade to build. But looking at Victoria's haunted eyes and Emma's tear-stained face, all Simone felt was a hollow, echoing sadness. How long? Simone asked. How long were you two together? Victoria flinched. 8 months. It ended when I told him I was pregnant. Did he love you? The question surprised them both. Victoria's eyes widened, then filled with something like pity. No, she said softly. I don't think Julian knows how to love anyone except himself. I was convenient. Young. Impressed by his money and his charm. She looked down at Emma. I thought I could change him. Make him see that we could be something real. But when I got pregnant... Her voice hardened. He handed me a check and a non-disclosure agreement. Told me to handle it quietly. But you didn't. I couldn't. Victoria's hand tightened on Emma's. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Even if her father can't see it. Emma looked up at Simone with those devastating blue eyes, Julian's eyes, and Simone felt something crack in her chest. This child hadn't asked to be born into secrets and shame. Hadn't asked for a father who treated her like a balance sheet liability. Mommy, can we go? Emma whispered. Everyone staring. Yeah, baby. We can go. Wait. The word left Simone's mouth before she'd fully formed the thought. Where are you staying? Victoria's jaw tightened. A motel off Route 1. Why? Because it's November in Boston, and you have a 6-year-old. Simone pulled up her Uber app with shaking fingers. Come on. You're not going back to a motel tonight. I don't need your charity. It's not charity. Simone looked at Victoria, then at Emma, and felt the weight of the evening settle onto her shoulders like a physical thing. It's the least I can do. Since my husband is apparently incapable of basic human decency. The Uber ride to Beacon Hill was silent except for Emma's soft breathing as she dozed against her mother's shoulder. Simone sat in the front seat, watching Boston blur past through windows that reflected her hollow-eyed stare. Her phone buzzed constantly. Julian's name flashing across the screen like an accusation. Please answer. We need to talk. I know you're angry, but this isn't what you think. Don't make any decisions tonight. Please. She silenced the phone and watched the city lights bleed together. The penthouse felt different when she unlocked the door 20 minutes later. The same furniture, the same art on the walls, the same view of the Boston Common stretched out below like a promise. But everything had shifted somehow, like looking at a familiar room through the wrong end of a telescope. Jesus, Victoria breathed, taking in the soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows. This is where you live. Where I lived, Simone corrected quietly. I don't know anymore. Emma had woken up during the elevator ride, and now she stared around the penthouse with wide eyes. Is this a castle? Something like that. Simone managed a smile that felt like it might crack her face. Are you hungry, Emma? The little girl nodded shyly. Simone led them to the kitchen, all marble counters and professional-grade appliances that barely got used. Julian preferred eating out, networking over expensive meals at venues where being seen mattered more than the food. She made grilled cheese sandwiches while Victoria watched from a bar stool, tension coiled in every line of her body. You didn't have to do this, Victoria said finally. Bringing us here. Feeding us. You should hate me. I'm working on it. Simone flipped a sandwich with more force than necessary. But right now, I'm too tired to hate anyone except my husband. Ex-husband. The question hung in the air between them. Simone thought about the 10 stones around her neck. The vows they'd exchanged. The life they'd built, or the life she'd thought they'd built. I don't know yet, she admitted. Ask me tomorrow. Emma ate 3 sandwiches and drank a full glass of milk, her hunger painful to watch. When was the last time this child had eaten a real meal? When had Julian last thought about whether his daughter was fed, clothed, safe? The question made Simone's stomach turn. There's a guest room down the hall, Simone said when Emma's eyes started drooping. Victoria, you and Emma can stay there tonight. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow. Why are you being nice to us? Victoria's voice was sharp with suspicion. I destroyed your anniversary. Your marriage. Your life. No. Simone met her eyes steadily. Julian did that. 7 years ago, when he decided a child was disposable. You're just the messenger. She showed them to the guest room, decorated in soft grays and whites, a California king bed that had never been used, an ensuite bathroom with designer fixtures. Emma's eyes went wide at the sight of the bathtub. Can I take a bath, Mommy? Of course, baby. Simone found clean towels and a t-shirt that would work as a nightgown for Emma. She left Victoria and her daughter to their bath and walked back to the master suite on legs that felt like they might give out. The room looked exactly as she'd left it hours ago. Her makeup still scattered across the vanity. Julian's watch on the nightstand. The bed perfectly made, waiting for their return. She sat on the edge of the mattress and finally let herself feel it, the full weight of betrayal crashing over her like a wave. 10 years. 10 years of waking up next to him. 10 years of building a life together, or so she'd thought. 10 years of trusting him with her heart, her body, her future. And all of it built on lies. Her phone buzzed again. Not Julian this time, but Jasmine. Girl, what the hell? It's all over Twitter. Are you okay? Call me. Right now. Simone, I'm serious. Call me. Simone stared at the messages, then opened Twitter with hands that shook. The hashtag #Montgomery scandal was trending. Photos everywhere. Julian's face frozen in shock. Victoria walking through the ballroom with Emma. Simone's expression in the moment she'd realized the truth, raw and devastated and horribly, painfully public. The headlines were brutal. Montgomery Capital CEO's secret daughter crashes anniversary party. Love child exposes Boston millionaire's 7-year lie. Wife walks out as husband's secret family revealed. The comments were worse. Imagine finding out like this. In front of everyone. That poor woman. 10 years with a cheater. The little girl looks just like him. How did nobody know? Gold digger probably trapped him. He should sue. That last comment made Simone's vision blur red. She was about to throw the phone across the room when a new text appeared. Julian. I'm downstairs. Please let me come up. We need to talk face to face. Her finger hovered over the delete button. Then, surprising herself, she typed back. 5 minutes. That's all you get. She waited in the living room, standing by the windows that overlooked the city. Boston glittered below like scattered diamonds, cold, beautiful, indifferent to the human dramas playing out in its expensive towers. The penthouse door opened. Julian stepped inside, and Simone barely recognized him. His tuxedo jacket was gone. His bow tie hung loose around his neck. His hair, always perfectly styled, stood up in spots where he'd run his hands through it. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes carved deeper by stress and fear. "Thank you for letting me up," he said quietly. 5 minutes, Julian. Starting now. He crossed the room but stopped several feet away, as if sensing the invisible wall between them. "I know you're angry." Angry. The word came out sharp. Angry is when you forget our anniversary dinner. Angry is when you criticize my family at Thanksgiving. This isn't angry, Julian. I don't even have a word for what this is. "It was a mistake," he said desperately. "One mistake that I've regretted every single day for 7 years. A mistake that produced a child. A mistake you hid from me for our entire marriage. A mistake you were still hiding until Victoria forced your hand tonight. I wanted to tell you." "When?" Simone's voice rose. "When were you going to tell me? On our 20th anniversary? Our 50th? Or were you just planning to take it to your grave and hope I never found out?" Julian's jaw clenched. "It wasn't that simple." "Then explain it to me. Make it make sense." She crossed her arms, feeling the diamonds at her throat press against her skin. "Tell me how the man I married, the man who promised me honesty and partnership and forever, could look at his own daughter and decide she wasn't worth the trouble." "I didn't." He stopped, ran a hand through his hair. "Victoria and I weren't serious. It was physical. Meaningless. And when she got pregnant, I panicked. So you paid her off." "I gave her options. Medical care. Financial support. Everything she needed to make whatever choice she wanted. Accept acknowledgement. Accept your name on the birth certificate. Accept the truth." The truth would have destroyed everything. Julian's composure cracked. "My mother would have cut me off. The firm would have questioned my judgment. And you," his voice dropped. "You would have left me. Just like you're going to leave me now." The words hung between them, raw and honest in a way nothing else had been all night. "Is that why you hid it?" Simone asked quietly. "Because you were afraid of losing me?" "Yes." The admission seemed to cost him. "I loved you, Simone. I love you. And I knew that if you found out about Victoria, about the baby, you'd never look at me the same way again." "You're right." Simone met his eyes. "I won't. Because the man I married doesn't exist. He never did." "That's not fair." "Fair." She laughed, brittle and sharp. "You keep using that word like it means something. Like you have any moral authority here. Julian, you abandoned your daughter. You paid her mother to disappear. And when that got inconvenient, you tried to make them disappear permanently by cutting off the money. What part of that is fair?" "I made a mistake. I was young and scared, Anne." "You were 29 years old. Not a kid. A grown man with a law degree and a trust fund and every advantage in the world. And you chose to abandon your child." The words landed like physical blows. Julian flinched, his careful composure crumbling. "What do you want me to say?" His voice cracked. "That I'm a terrible person? That I failed Emma? I know all of that. I've known it for 7 years. But I can't go back and change it. All I can do is try to move forward, Anne." "And what? Pretend it never happened? Pay Victoria enough to keep her quiet? Throw some money at the problem and hope it goes away?" "No." He stepped closer, desperation in every line of his body. "I'll acknowledge Emma. Publicly. I'll provide for her properly. I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. Whatever it takes except tell me the truth 7 years ago." "I should have," he admitted quietly. "I should have told you before we got married. Before the engagement, even. I should have been honest from the start. But you weren't." "No, I wasn't." He reached for her hand, but she pulled away. "Simone, please. 10 years. That has to count for something. We've built a life together. A home. A future. Built on lies. Built on love," he corrected. "Yes, I lied about Victoria. About Emma. And I know that's unforgivable. But everything else, our marriage, our partnership, the life we've created, that's real. You have to believe that." Simone looked at him, this man she'd thought she knew better than anyone, and felt the full weight of her naivety. I don't know what I believe anymore, she said quietly. I don't know what's real and what's performance. I don't know if you actually love me or if I'm just another part of the life you wanted to build. Another asset to manage. You're not an asset. You're my wife. Am I? The question hung between them. Because wives deserve honesty. Wives deserve partnership. Wives deserve to know when their husband has a child with another woman. Julian's face crumpled. For the first time since she'd known him, he looked genuinely lost. Tell me how to fix this, he said. Tell me what you need, and I'll do it. Simone thought about Victoria in the guest room, putting Emma to bed in a stranger's house because her own home was a motel off Route 1. Thought about 7 years of lies and half-truths. Thought about the life she'd built with Julian, the penthouse, the social standing, the carefully curated existence that suddenly felt like a gilded cage. I need you to leave, she said finally. Simone. I need you to leave, Julian. Tonight. Right now. I need space to think without you here, without your explanations and promises and desperate attempts to salvage this. Where am I supposed to go? I don't know. A hotel. Your mother's place. Trevor's guest room. Anywhere but here. He stared at her, and she watched him cycle through calculations. How much to push, when to retreat, what strategy might work. Even now, he was thinking like a lawyer, like a businessman negotiating a deal. Okay, he said finally. I'll go. But Simone, his voice cracked. Please don't make any permanent decisions tonight. Please just think about it. About us. About everything we've built together. She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Julian walked to the door, each step heavy with defeat. He paused in the doorway, looking back at her one last time. I love you, he said quietly. I know you don't believe me right now. But I do. I always have. Then he was gone, the door clicking shut with a finality that echoed through the penthouse. Simone stood alone in the living room, surrounded by the trappings of the life they'd built together. The view. The art. The furniture chosen during weekend shopping trips that had felt romantic at the time. She walked to the window and pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching the city lights blur through her tears. Behind her, in the guest room, a 6-year-old girl slept, her husband's daughter, a child he'd hidden for 7 years. And for the first time in 10 years, Simone Montgomery had no idea what came next. When trust is shattered, can a marriage survive? What would you do in Simone's position? Fight for the relationship or walk away? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Morning came without mercy. Simone woke on the living room couch, still wearing the emerald gown, her neck stiff from sleeping at an awkward angle. Pale sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning Boston into a watercolor of grays and golds. For one blissful moment, she forgot. Then reality crashed back. Victoria, Emma, the ballroom, Julian's face when his daughter appeared. The weight of it pressed down on her chest like a physical thing. Her phone lay on the coffee table, screen dark but heavy with unread messages. 43 texts. 17 missed calls. Her social media notifications had climbed into the hundreds. She ignored all of it and walked to the guest room. The door was cracked open. Inside, Victoria sat on the edge of the bed, watching Emma sleep. The little girl was curled into a ball, clutching a decorative pillow like a teddy bear, her sandy hair spread across white sheets. How long have you been awake? Simone asked quietly. Victoria startled, then relaxed when she saw who it was. Since sunrise. Old habit from when Emma was a baby. She looked back at her daughter. I keep thinking she'll wake up and this will all have been a dream. The good kind, where we're safe and warm and someone actually cares. Simone leaned against the doorframe, studying Victoria in the morning light. Without makeup, she looked younger, mid-30s at most. Pretty in an understated way, with tired eyes that had seen too much disappointment. Tell me what happened, Simone said. The real story. Not the version you gave in front of 200 people. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I was 26 when I met Julian. Fresh out of paralegal school, working at a firm that did business with Montgomery Capital. He came in for a meeting, and I was assigned to help with document prep. She smiled bitterly. He was charming. Attentive. Made me feel like I was the only person in the room. I should have known better. How did it start? Late nights at the office. He'd stay to review contracts, ask me to help. We'd order dinner, talk about our lives. He told me about growing up with Catherine Montgomery's expectations crushing him. About building his business from nothing. About wanting something real in a world full of fake people. Victoria's laugh was sharp. I believed every word. When did it become physical? 3 weeks after we met. He kissed me in the conference room after everyone else had gone home. Said he couldn't help himself. That I was different from the society girls his mother kept throwing at him. She looked at Simone. He said you two had broken up. That it had been casual anyway. That he needed to figure out what he really wanted. The lie landed like a punch. Simone remembered that period. 3 years into their relationship, right before Julian had proposed. He'd been distant for a few weeks, claiming work stress. She'd worried he was having doubts about their future. Turns out, he'd been having an affair. How long before you found out about me? Simone asked. 2 months. I saw a photo on his desk, you and him at some charity gala. When I asked, he said you were his ex who wouldn't let go. That you were causing problems, trying to get back together, making things complicated. Victoria's voice hardened. I felt sorry for you. Can you believe that? I actually felt bad for the woman I was helping him cheat on. When did you find out the truth? When I got pregnant. I told him, and he went pale. Asked how it happened, like we hadn't been sleeping together for 6 months. Then he told me we needed to discuss options. She made air quotes, her expression bitter. The next day, his lawyer showed up at my apartment with papers. A non-disclosure agreement. A check for $250,000. And a strongly worded suggestion that I consider all available medical solutions. He wanted you to abort. He didn't say it outright. Too smart for that. But the implication was clear. Take the money, handle it quietly, disappear from his life. If I chose to keep the baby, he'd provide reasonable support through his lawyer, but only if I signed the NDA and agreed to never contact him directly or reveal his identity to anyone. Simone's stomach turned. But you signed. I was 26, pregnant, and terrified. I just found out the man I loved was a married liar. His lawyer made it very clear that if I didn't sign, Julian would make my life hell. I'd lose my job. Get blacklisted in Boston's legal community. He had the power and money to bury me. So you took the deal. I took the deal. Victoria looked at Emma, her expression softening. And I've never regretted having her. Not once. She's the best thing that ever came from that disaster. When did the payment stop? Victoria's jaw tightened. 6 months ago. No warning, no explanation. The checks just stopped coming. I called the lawyer, got told my file was closed and future contact would be considered harassment. I tried reaching Julian directly, and he blocked my number. Blocked my email. Had security at Montgomery Capital turn me away when I showed up at his office. Why? I don't know. Maybe he thought enough time had passed that I'd give up. Maybe he got tired of the monthly reminder. Maybe, she looked at Simone. Maybe his wife was getting suspicious and he needed to cut all ties. The words hung heavy in the air. Simone thought about the past 6 months, Julian's increased stress, his defensive attitude when she asked about work, the password changes and face-down phones. She'd thought it was business pressure. It had been him trying to erase his daughter. What did you do? Simone asked. Everything I could. I burned through savings. Took extra shifts waitressing. Sold everything worth selling. But Emma needed things. School supplies, winter clothes, medicine when she got sick. The motel was the cheapest place I could find that would take us without a credit check. And last night. Last night was my last option. I'd tried everything else. Lawyers said I couldn't afford to fight him. Social services couldn't help without proof, and his people had made it clear that any public accusation would result in legal destruction. Victoria's voice cracked. So I waited until your anniversary. Found out about the party through a friend who works at the Fairmorn. I figured if I confronted him publicly, surrounded by witnesses, he couldn't just make me disappear. You used our anniversary as leverage. I used the only weapon I had, shame. Public accountability. The one thing men like Julian fear more than anything. Victoria met Simone's eyes. I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of any of this. But my daughter needed her father to acknowledge her. And I was out of options. Simone understood, in a distant, analytical way. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. What happens now? She asked. I don't know. I thought maybe, if enough people saw, if it became public enough, he'd have to do something. Pay child support. Acknowledge Emma. Give her a chance at the life she deserves. Victoria's voice broke. I just want my daughter to be okay. That's all I've ever wanted. On the bed, Emma stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, confused for a moment about where she was. Then she saw her mother and relaxed. Morning, baby, Victoria said softly. Is this still the castle? Emma asked, her voice small and hopeful. Yes, sweetie. Still the castle. Emma sat up, her gaze finding Simone in the doorway. Are you a princess? The question caught Simone off guard. She looked down at herself, still in the emerald gown, now wrinkled and tear-stained, the diamonds at her throat feeling heavier by the second. No, she said quietly. I'm not a princess. I'm just someone who's trying to figure out what's real and what's pretend. Emma considered this with the seriousness of childhood. My teacher says real things are the things that make you feel something. Like when I hug mommy and feel safe. That's real. Out of the mouths of babes. Simone's phone buzzed in her hand. Julian's name flashed across the screen, but before she could dismiss it, another call came through. Catherine Montgomery. Her mother-in-law. The woman who'd spent 10 years barely tolerating Simone's presence in the Montgomery family. Simone almost didn't answer. Then, surprising herself, she did. Catherine. We need to talk. Catherine's voice was ice over steel. Immediately. I'm sending a car. I'm not interested in. This isn't a request, Simone. What happened last night is a disaster for the entire family. We need to discuss damage control before this spirals further. Damage control, Simone repeated flatly. Your son has a secret daughter, and you want to talk about damage control. I want to talk about protecting what matters. The Montgomery name. The business. Our reputation. A pause. Your future. My future isn't your concern anymore. Isn't it? Catherine's voice sharpened. You're still married to my son. Still a Montgomery. That means something, whether you like it or not. And right now, every society page in Boston is running photos of you looking devastated at your own anniversary party. Do you really want that to be the story? Poor Simone, the abandoned wife. The words stung because they were true. Simone had seen the headlines, the photos, the comments dissecting her pain for public consumption. What are you proposing? Simone asked carefully. Meet me at the Four Seasons in an hour. We'll discuss your options. All of them. The line went dead. Simone stared at her phone, mind racing. Whatever Catherine wanted, it wouldn't be simple. The Montgomery matriarch didn't do anything without calculating every angle, every advantage. But maybe that was exactly what Simone needed right now, someone who understood how to fight in a world built on appearances and power. I have to go out, Simone said to Victoria. But you and Emma can stay here as long as you need. There's food in the kitchen, extra clothes in the closet. Make yourselves at home. Victoria looked at her with something like wonder. Why are you being so kind to us? After everything. Simone thought about Emma's question. Are you a princess? Because someone should be, she said finally. And it's clearly not going to be my husband. The Four Seasons presidential suite looked exactly like Catherine Montgomery, expensive, tasteful, and designed to intimidate. Simone found her mother-in-law standing by floor-to-ceiling windows, dressed in a Chanel suit that probably cost more than Victoria's yearly income. Catherine didn't turn when Simone entered, just kept staring out at the Boston skyline like a general surveying a battlefield. You came, Catherine said. Good. That shows you still have some sense. I came because I want to hear what you have to say. Not because I'm taking orders. Catherine turned, her expression unreadable. Up close, she looked older than usual, lines of stress around her eyes, her makeup unable to fully disguise the exhaustion. Do you know how many calls I've received since last night? Catherine asked. 73. From board members, investors, society reporters, family friends, all wanting to know if the rumors are true. If my son really has a bastard child who crashed his anniversary party. She's not a bastard, Simone said sharply. She's a little girl named Emma. And she's Julian's daughter whether you acknowledge it or not. Acknowledgement is precisely what we need to discuss. Catherine crossed to a credenza and poured 2 glasses of scotch, handing one to Simone. I've spent the morning with our lawyers. The situation is complicated. Complicated how? The non-disclosure agreement Victoria signed 7 years ago has clauses. She violated several of them last night by publicly identifying Julian as Emma's father. We could sue her for breach of contract. Simone's hand tightened on the glass. You want to sue a woman who's been living in a motel because your son abandoned their daughter. I want to protect my family's interests. There's a difference. Catherine took a measured sip of scotch. However, our lawyers have also pointed out that a lawsuit would generate more publicity. More stories about Julian's callousness. More photos of that adorable child with his eyes. So you're stuck. We're all stuck, Catherine corrected. Including you. Because as long as you're married to Julian, you're part of this mess. The abandoned wife. The woman who didn't know her husband had a secret family. How do you think that looks? I don't particularly care how it looks. Don't you? Catherine's gaze was sharp. Then why did you come here? Why not just file for divorce, take your settlement, and disappear? You could be free of all of this by next week. The question hit closer than Simone wanted to admit. She'd asked herself the same thing all morning. I came because I want answers, Simone said. And because I want to make sure Emma is taken care of. The child. Your granddaughter. The word hung between them like a challenge. Catherine's expression flickered, something that might have been pain, quickly suppressed. I have 3 grandsons from my daughter Caroline, Catherine said quietly. I've never met this child. Never held her. Never seen her except in the photos that are now plastered all over social media. Whose fault is that? Julian's, Catherine admitted, surprising Simone. My son made terrible choices. Cowardly choices. He should have told you about Victoria before you married. He should have supported his daughter properly. He should have been honest. But that doesn't change our current reality. We have a public relations disaster, a potential legal nightmare, and a family that's about to be torn apart. Catherine finished her scotch. Unless we get ahead of it. What are you proposing? Catherine pulled out a folder, laying it on the coffee table between them. Option 1. You divorce Julian. We provide you with a generous settlement, $10 million, the penthouse, and enough connections to rebuild whatever life you want. You make a statement to the press about irreconcilable differences, wish Julian well, and walk away clean. While Julian does what? Continues ignoring his daughter. Julian will be required to establish proper child support and visitation with Emma as part of the divorce agreement. The lawyers are already drawing up paperwork. Simone stared at the folder. $10 million. Freedom. A clean break from the lies. What's option 2? Catherine's expression shifted into something calculating. Option 2. You stay married to Julian. You issue a joint statement saying you're committed to working through this as a family. You publicly acknowledge Emma and welcome her into the Montgomery family with grace and compassion. You want me to play the magnanimous wife. I want you to play the woman who's strong enough to rise above scandal. The woman who chooses family over ego. The woman who shows Boston society what real class looks like. Catherine leaned forward. In exchange, Julian agrees to immediate and substantial support for Emma. Regular visitation. Therapy for all parties involved. And full transparency with you about his finances and activities going forward. And if I refuse? Then we all lose. You lose the marriage and the security it provided. Julian loses his reputation and potentially his business. Emma loses any chance of having her father in her life. Catherine's voice hardened. And Victoria loses the leverage she gained last night, because we'll tie her up in lawsuits until she wishes she'd never walked into that ballroom. There it was, the threat wrapped in silk. You'd really destroy Victoria to protect Julian? Simone asked. I'd do whatever necessary to protect my family. Which currently includes you, whether you believe it or not. Catherine's expression softened fractionally. I know I haven't been the warmest mother-in-law. I had reservations when Julian brought you home. But you've proven yourself over the years. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. The compliment landed strangely. 10 years too late. What do you really want, Catherine? The truth. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was tired in a way Simone had never heard before. I want my son to stop running from his mistakes. I want that little girl to have a chance at stability. And I want to know that when I'm gone, the Montgomery name stands for something more than scandal and cowardice. She met Simone's eyes. I want to fix this. All of it. But I can't do it without you. Simone looked at the folder on the table. 2 choices. 2 futures. Both of them built on compromise and calculation. I need time, Simone said finally. You have 24 hours. After that, the press narrative gets away from us completely, and it becomes damage control instead of story management. Simone stood, the folder still unopened on the table. I'll let you know. She was at the door when Catherine spoke again. Simone, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. You deserved better than this. The apology caught Simone off guard. She turned to find Catherine looking genuinely regretful, the Ice Queen facade cracked just enough to show the human underneath. We all deserved better, Simone said quietly. Especially Emma. By the time Simone returned to the penthouse, she'd made her decision. She found Victoria and Emma in the kitchen, making pancakes. The little girl stood on a chair, carefully pouring batter onto the griddle while her mother supervised. They both looked up when Simone entered, and something in her expression made Victoria tense. Is everything okay? Victoria asked. No, Simone said honestly. But it will be. She pulled out her phone and made a call she should have made hours ago. Jasmine? I need your help. And I need the name of the best family lawyer in Boston. Her sister's voice came through strong and sure. Already sent you 3 names. I've been waiting for you to call. How did you know? Because I know you, sis. You don't run from fights. You rewrite the rules. A pause. What are you planning? Simone looked at Emma, who was watching her with those devastating blue eyes, Julian's eyes. I'm planning to make sure a little girl gets the father she deserves, Simone said. Even if I have to burn everything down to do it. That's my sister. Let's go to war. Simone hung up and turned to Victoria. I need you to tell me everything. Every detail of your relationship with Julian. Every payment. Every threat. Every promise he made and broke. All of it. Victoria's eyes widened. Why? Because Catherine Montgomery just gave me 2 options. Walk away quietly or stay and fight for Emma properly. She thinks I'll choose the easy path. Take the money and run. And you're not going to. Simone thought about 10 years of marriage. 10 years of trying to fit into a world that had never quite accepted her. 10 years of making herself smaller, quieter, more palatable to people who would never see her as anything but Julian's charity case from Brooklyn. She was done shrinking. No, Simone said firmly. I'm going to choose option 3. What's option 3? Simone smiled, sharp and determined. The one where I stop playing by their rules and start making my own. The press conference was scheduled for noon. Simone stood in front of her bedroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her navy suit. Professional. Polished. Powerful. The kind of armor she'd worn through 1,000 society events, but this time it felt different. This time, she wasn't performing for anyone. Behind her, Jasmine sat on the bed, reviewing notes on her tablet. Her sister had arrived from New York within hours of the call, bringing with her a fierce determination and the contact information for Rebecca Torres, one of Boston's most formidable family law attorneys. You sure about this? Jasmine asked. Once you go public, there's no taking it back. Simone met her sister's eyes in the mirror. I'm sure. Good. Jasmine stood, crossing to adjust Simone's collar with the critical eye of a sister who'd helped her get ready for her first day of law school 13 years ago. Because you're about to shake up Boston in a way they've never seen. That city's not ready for what you're about to do. They should have thought of that before they tried to make me choose between my dignity and a little girl's future. In the living room, Victoria sat with Emma, both of them dressed in the clothes Simone had bought that morning. Simple, tasteful outfits that said normal people rather than charity cases. Emma wore a blue dress that brought out her eyes, her hair brushed and styled, looking every inch the Montgomery granddaughter she was. Rebecca Torres arrived at 11:30, briefcase in hand and expression all business. She was 50, Brazilian, and had a reputation for destroying men who tried to hide assets during divorces. "Everything's ready," Rebecca said, laying out documents on the dining table. "But I need to confirm one more time. You understand what you're giving up?" Simone looked at the papers. Catherine's offer had been generous. $10 million, the penthouse, a clean break. Most women in her position would have taken it without hesitation. But Simone kept thinking about Emma's question. "Are you a princess?" Princesses in fairy tales got rescued. They waited in towers for someone else to solve their problems. Simone was done waiting. "I understand," she said firmly. "Let's do this." The conference room at the Boston Harbor Hotel was packed. Reporters from every major outlet. Cameras from local and national news. Society journalists who'd spent a decade chronicling the Montgomery family's movements. They'd all shown up within an hour of Simone's team sending out the press release. Simone Montgomery to make statement regarding husband's secret daughter. The buzz of conversation died when Simone walked in, flanked by Rebecca Torres on one side and Victoria, with Emma, on the other. Jasmine brought up the rear, her expression daring anyone to question their presence. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. Simone took a position behind a podium bearing the hotel's logo, cleared her throat, and looked directly into the cameras. "Thank you for coming. My name is Simone Montgomery, and I'm here to set the record straight about what happened 3 nights ago at my anniversary party." She paused, letting the silence build. 48 hours ago, I learned that my husband, Julian Montgomery, has a 6-year-old daughter named Emma. He fathered this child 7 years ago during our relationship and hid her existence throughout our entire marriage. Simone's voice remained steady, clinical. This discovery was made publicly, in front of 200 guests, when Emma's mother, Victoria Hartwell, came to our anniversary celebration seeking help after Julian stopped supporting their daughter 6 months ago. The reporters erupted with questions. Simone held up a hand. "I'll take questions after my statement. What I want to address first is what happens next, because several narratives have emerged over the past 2 days, and I want to be clear about where I stand." She glanced at Victoria, who gave a small, encouraging nod. "Some people have suggested I should divorce my husband quietly, take a settlement, and move on. That's certainly one option." Simone paused. "Others have suggested I should stand by Julian publicly, forgive his deception, and help him rehabilitate his image while he makes token gestures toward acknowledging his daughter." Rebecca shifted beside her, satisfaction clear in her expression. "I'm choosing neither of those options," Simone said firmly. "Instead, I'm here to announce that I'm filing for legal separation from Julian Montgomery, effective immediately. But unlike a typical separation, I'm not seeking alimony or a financial settlement for myself." The room exploded with noise. Cameras flashed frantically. "What I am seeking," Simone continued, her voice cutting through the chaos, "is full legal guardianship of Emma Hartwell, with Victoria's consent, and a comprehensive child support agreement that ensures Emma receives the financial support and educational opportunities she deserves as Julian Montgomery's daughter." More flashes. More questions shouted over each other. Victoria stepped forward, Emma's hand in hers. "I'm Victoria Hartwell, and I want to confirm that I'm voluntarily agreeing to shared guardianship with Simone Montgomery. Emma deserves stability, safety, and the resources that come with being recognized as Julian's daughter. Simone has offered to provide all of that while Julian decides whether he wants to be a father or just write checks." The questions came rapid fire. "Mrs. Montgomery, why would you take guardianship of your husband's child from an affair? Ms. Hartwell, are you giving up your daughter for money? Is this revenge against Julian Montgomery?" Simone held up her hand again, and the room gradually quieted. "I'm taking guardianship because Emma is an innocent child who deserves better than what she's been given. She deserves a home. Stability. Adults who put her needs first." Simone looked directly at the cameras. "I'm not doing this to punish my husband or to play the martyr. I'm doing this because someone needs to, and I have the resources to make it happen." "What about your marriage?" a reporter called out. "My marriage is over," Simone said simply. "Whether we divorce immediately or separate permanently, the relationship I thought I had with Julian doesn't exist. It never did. He built our life on lies, and I refuse to keep living in that fiction. Will you seek custody of Emma permanently? That depends on Julian. Simone's expression hardened. If he wants to be a real father, not just a name on a check, then we'll work out shared custody arrangements. If he continues to treat Emma as a problem to be managed rather than a daughter to be loved, then yes, I'll pursue full custody. Rebecca stepped forward. We filed paperwork with the family court this morning requesting emergency temporary guardianship, citing the unstable living situation Emma has endured for the past 6 months. We're also seeking a forensic accounting of Julian Montgomery's payments to Victoria Hartwell to establish a pattern of financial abandonment. Is Julian Montgomery here? Someone shouted. No, Simone said. He was invited to attend and make his own statement. He declined. That would play terribly for him, and they both knew it. Catherine would be furious. Simone had given Julian every opportunity to show up and do the right thing, and he'd chosen to hide instead. One more thing, Simone said, pulling out a document. I'm also announcing the formation of the Emma Montgomery Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to supporting single mothers and children who've been abandoned by wealthy fathers. The foundation will provide legal assistance, housing support, and educational resources to families in situations similar to Victoria's. She looked directly into the camera, knowing Julian would be watching. I'm funding the foundation with my own money I earned before I married Julian, money I've made through my own investments over the past decade. Because I want it to be very clear, this isn't about Julian's wealth or the Montgomery name. This is about doing what's right. The questions continued, but Rebecca stepped in. That's all for today. Written statements will be distributed within the hour. Thank you. The penthouse felt different when they returned. Emma ran immediately to the window, pressing her hands against the glass. Mommy, look. You can see the whole world from here. Victoria stood beside her daughter, exhaustion and hope warring on her face. Not the whole world, baby, but a pretty big piece of it. Simone's phone had been ringing non-stop since the press conference. Julian's name appeared repeatedly, along with Catherine's, and numbers she didn't recognize, probably reporters looking for follow-up quotes. She ignored them all. Jasmine emerged from the kitchen with coffee. That was incredible. You just became the most talked-about woman in Boston. Maybe the whole country. I don't care about being talked about, Simone said, sinking onto the couch. The adrenaline that had carried her through the press conference was fading, leaving her hollowed out and exhausted. Well, you should care a little, because the internet is losing its mind. #Simone Montgomery is trending nationwide. People are calling you a hero, a saint, a boss. Jasmine scrolled through her phone. Okay, some people are calling you an idiot for giving up millions, but those are mostly bitter men who can't imagine choosing principle over profit. What are they saying about Julian? Jasmine's expression darkened. Nothing good. His business partners are reportedly distancing themselves. Montgomery Capital stock dropped 6% today. And someone leaked information about other women. Apparently, Victoria wasn't the only affair. The news should have hurt more than it did. Instead, Simone just felt numb. Mrs. Montgomery. Emma's small voice interrupted her thoughts. The little girl stood in front of her, clutching the decorative pillow she'd adopted as her security blanket. Are you really going to be Are you going to take care of me? Simone looked at those blue eyes, Julian's eyes, and felt her heart crack open. Yes, she said simply. If that's what you want. If your mom agrees. Would that be okay with you? Emma considered this with the seriousness of a child who'd learned early that adult promises couldn't always be trusted. Will I have to leave my mom? Never, Simone said firmly. Your mom loves you more than anything. This just means you'll have 2 homes. 2 people looking out for you. Twice as many people who care. What about my daddy? The question hung in the air. Victoria tensed, ready to intervene, but Simone held up a hand. Your daddy is figuring some things out right now, Simone said carefully. He made some mistakes. Big ones. But if he wants to be part of your life, really be part of it, not just send money, then we'll make sure that happens. Does he love me? God, what a question. How do you explain to a 6-year-old that her father might not be capable of love? That some people only know how to see others as assets or liabilities. I don't know, Simone said honestly. But you know what I do know? You deserve to be loved. You deserve people who show up for you. And whether that's your daddy or not, you're going to have that. I promise. Emma studied her for a long moment. Then, surprising everyone, she climbed onto the couch and curled against Simone's side. Okay, she said simply. Can we have pancakes again? Victoria's eyes filled with tears. Jasmine smiled. And Simone wrapped an arm around this little girl who'd accidentally blown up her entire life, and somehow made everything clearer in the process. Julian finally showed up at midnight. Simone heard his key in the lock, his footsteps in the entryway. She'd been expecting him, had stayed up specifically for this conversation. He found her in the living room, still dressed in her suit from the press conference, a glass of wine untouched beside her. That was quite a performance today, Julian said. His voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the anger beneath it. It wasn't a performance. It was the truth. The truth. He laughed bitterly. You made me look like a monster in front of the entire country. No, Julian. You did that yourself when you abandoned your daughter. He crossed to the bar, poured himself 3 fingers of scotch. You didn't have to destroy me to make your point. We could have handled this privately. Like you handled it privately for 7 years. Simone stood, facing him across the room. I gave you every opportunity. I waited for you to do the right thing. You chose to hide instead. So you're taking my daughter. The words came out raw, claiming her like some kind of prize. I'm giving her stability. There's a difference. Julian drained half the scotch. Catherine is furious. The board is demanding my resignation. I've lost 3 major investors today alone. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? What I wanted, Simone said quietly, was a husband who told me the truth. A partner who didn't hide his child. A man who could look at his own daughter and see something besides a problem. I see, he stopped, started again. She's 6 years old. I missed everything. Her birth. Her first words. First steps. How am I supposed to just be a father now? The same way every father does. You show up. You try. You fail sometimes and try again. Simone's voice softened despite herself. But Jules, you have to actually want it. You can't do it because I'm forcing you or because the press is watching. Emma deserves a father who chooses her. And if I can't? If I don't know how? Then you step aside and let people who love her take care of her. The words landed like a physical blow. Julian sank onto the couch, looking older than she'd ever seen him. I really loved you, you know, he said quietly. That wasn't a lie. Maybe the only thing that wasn't. I know, Simone said. And she did. Julian had loved her the way he knew how, possessively, performatively, with the same calculation he applied to every other aspect of his life. But love isn't enough if it's not honest. So that's it? 10 years, and you're just done. I'm done with the lies. I'm done with the performance. I'm done pretending we built something real when it was all just carefully managed fiction. Julian was quiet for a long time. Then, what happens to Emma? That's up to you. The guardianship hearing is in 2 weeks. If you want to be involved, really involved, then show up. Talk to the judge. Talk to Emma. Prove that you're ready to be a father. And if I'm not ready? Simone thought about Emma's question. Does he love me? Then you sign the papers giving me full custody, and you write the checks. It's not what I want for her, but it's better than the uncertainty she's been living with. This foundation you announced is happening whether you support it or not. I meant what I said, Julian. I'm done playing by rules designed to protect men like you. He looked at her, and for a moment, she saw genuine pain in his eyes. You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I know you don't believe that, but it's true. Then you should have treated me, and Emma, like we mattered more than your reputation. Julian stood, set down his glass with careful precision. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. You deserved better. Yes, Simone agreed. I did. He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the knob. The penthouse is yours. I'll have my things moved out by the weekend. And Simone. He turned back one last time. Thank you. For being better than I deserved. For doing what I should have done years ago. Then he was gone, and the penthouse fell silent. Simone stood alone in the living room one last time, surrounded by the remnants of her old life. Tomorrow, she'd start building something new, something honest, something real, something that didn't require her to shrink herself to fit someone else's vision. But tonight, she just breathed. 3 months later. The foundation office was modest compared to the penthouse, a renovated brownstone in the South End with exposed brick and mismatched furniture. But it felt more like home than any of Julian's carefully curated spaces ever had. Simone stood in the main room, reviewing applications with her small staff. 23 families in the first month alone, all needing help navigating custody battles against wealthy fathers who decided their children weren't worth the inconvenience. Mrs. Montgomery. Her assistant poked her head in. Your 3 o'clock is here. Simone looked up to find Victoria in the doorway, Emma beside her. The little girl wore her school uniform. She was enrolled at a good private school now, thriving in ways that made Simone's heart sing. Hey, you two. What brings you by? Show her, baby, Victoria prompted. Emma held up a drawing, crayon stick figures against a backdrop of blue sky. 3 figures holding hands. One with yellow hair, Victoria, one smaller with blue eyes, Emma, and one with dark skin and a big smile, Simone. It's my family, Emma announced proudly. Mrs. Chen said we had to draw our family for art class, and I drew all 3 of us. All 3 of us, Simone repeated, her throat tight. Is that okay? Emma asked, suddenly uncertain. Teacher said family is the people who love you. And you love me, right? Simone knelt down, eye level with this little girl who'd accidentally changed everything. I love you so much, Emma. And I'm honored to be in your family picture. Emma beamed. Then, more quietly, my daddy came to school yesterday. Simone glanced at Victoria, who nodded. Julian's been showing up. Twice a week for the past month. He takes her for ice cream, helps with homework. He's trying. Is he good at being a daddy? Emma asked Simone, as if she'd know the answer. I think he's learning, Simone said carefully. Just like the rest of us. It was true. Julian had appeared at the custody hearing, had stood before the judge and admitted his failures with a candor that had surprised everyone. He'd agreed to shared custody, to therapy, to actually showing up for his daughter. Some weeks he did better than others. Some weeks he forgot to call, got caught up in work, reverted to seeing Emma as an obligation rather than a joy. But he was there. Imperfectly, frustratingly, but there. It was a start. Can I go play in the reading corner? Emma asked, already eyeing the children's books Simone had stocked for families who visited. Of course, sweetie. Emma ran off, and Victoria sank into a chair across from Simone. How are you doing? Simone asked. Really? Better. Victoria smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. I got promoted at my new job. We moved into a real apartment, 2 bedrooms, near Emma's school. I'm even dating again. Nothing serious, just testing the waters. That's wonderful. It's because of you. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. Everything good that's happened in the past 3 months, it's because you chose to help us instead of protecting yourself. I chose to do what was right, Simone corrected gently. And honestly, helping Emma helped me too. Gave me a purpose beyond just surviving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine. Turn on channel 5. Now. Simone grabbed the remote, switching on the TV mounted in the corner. A news anchor appeared, and below her, a chyron. Montgomery Capital announces $5 million donation to Emma Montgomery Foundation. Simone's breath caught. The anchor continued, in a surprise move, Julian Montgomery, whose secret daughter became national news 3 months ago, has announced a major donation to the foundation his estranged wife created to help families in similar situations. In a statement, Montgomery says, I can't undo my mistakes, but I can try to prevent others from making them. This donation is the first step in taking real responsibility. Victoria stared at the screen. Did you know about this? No, Simone whispered. He didn't tell me. Her phone rang. Julian's name appeared, and for the first time in 3 months, she answered. Did you see? He asked without preamble. I saw. It's not enough. I know it's not enough. But it's something, right? It's a start. Simone watched Emma in the corner, surrounded by books, her face peaceful in a way it hadn't been 3 months ago. "Yes, Julian," she said softly. "It's a start." "Can I?" He hesitated. "Can I stop by the foundation sometime? Not for publicity. Just to see what you're building. To understand." "You can stop by," Simone agreed. "But Jules? Don't do this for the optics. Don't do it because your board wants good press. Do it because you actually want to be better." "I do," he said quietly. "I want to be the man you thought I was. I want to be the father Emma deserves. I'm not sure I know how." "None of us know how," Simone said. "We're all just figuring it out as we go. But the difference is whether you show up to try." They talked for a few more minutes, carefully, like two people learning to navigate a new relationship built on honesty instead of performance. When she hung up, Victoria was watching her with an expression Simone couldn't quite read. "Do you think you'll ever forgive him?" Victoria asked. Simone thought about 10 years of marriage. About lies and love and the complicated space between them. About a little girl who deserved better and a man slowly learning how to give it to her. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think maybe forgiveness isn't the right question. Maybe the question is whether he can forgive himself enough to actually change." Emma came running back, clutching a book. "Can you read this to me? It's about a princess who saves herself." Simone smiled, pulling the little girl onto her lap. "A princess who saves herself. That's my favorite kind of story." She opened the book, Victoria settling beside them, and began to read. Outside, Boston moved through its evening rhythms, taxis honking, people rushing to catch trains, the city alive with 1,000 stories unfolding simultaneously. But in this small office, in this moment, Simone Montgomery read a story about a princess who didn't wait to be rescued. And for the first time in 10 years, she felt like herself. Not Julian's wife. Not the girl from Brooklyn trying to prove she belonged in Boston's elite circles. Just Simone. Flawed, healing, learning to build a life on truth instead of pretty lies. The anniversary she'd never forget hadn't given her what she expected. It had given her something better, the courage to choose herself, and in choosing herself, to help a little girl understand that she was worth choosing too. 6 months later. The Emma Montgomery Foundation's first annual gala was nothing like the anniversary party that had ended Simone's old life. No pretense. No performance. Just real people celebrating real victories. 18 families helped through custody battles. 12 women relocated to safe housing. 6 children reunited with parents who'd learned to be better. Simone stood at the podium in a simple black dress, looking out at a room full of supporters. Some were wealthy donors looking to make a difference. Others were families they'd helped, dressed in their best, proud to be part of something meaningful. And in the front row sat Emma, between Victoria and Julian. Julian, who'd completed 6 months of therapy. Who showed up every Tuesday and Thursday for dinner with his daughter. Who'd stepped back from Montgomery Capital to focus on being present instead of profitable. He wasn't perfect. He still struggled with expressing emotion, still defaulted to solving problems with money when presence would work better. But he was trying, and slowly, Emma was learning to trust him. "When I started this foundation," Simone said, "I thought I was doing it for other people. For families who'd been abandoned, children who needed advocates. But I've realized I was doing it for myself too, learning to advocate for my own worth, to demand honesty, to build something real." She looked at Emma, who waved enthusiastically. "A very wise 6-year-old once asked me if I was a princess. And I told her no, I'm just someone figuring out what's real and what's pretend." Simone smiled. "But maybe that's what makes someone a princess. Not the crown or the castle, but the courage to save yourself and then use that strength to help others do the same." The applause was thunderous. After the speeches, Simone found herself on the terrace, looking out at Boston Harbor. The city lights reflected off dark water, beautiful and imperfect. "It's a good thing you're doing here." Catherine Montgomery appeared beside her, elegant in Chanel, her expression softer than Simone had ever seen it. "I was wrong about you. All those years, I thought you weren't strong enough for this family. Turns out, you were too strong for us." "Catherine. Let me finish." The older woman held up a hand. "Julian is becoming the man he should have been all along, and it's because you refused to let him hide. Emma is thriving. And you," she looked at Simone with something like pride. "You've built something that matters. The Montgomery name will be remembered for this, not for Julian's mistakes. It was the closest Catherine had ever come to an apology, and Simone accepted it with grace. "Thank you," she said simply. Inside, Emma was dancing with her father, both of them laughing at Julian's terrible rhythm. Victoria watched from nearby, her new boyfriend, a teacher from Emma's school, beside her, his hand warm in hers. Jasmine appeared with champagne, pressing a glass into Simone's hand. "To new beginnings." "To honest ones," Simone corrected, clinking glasses. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hi, my name is Patricia. I saw your story on the news. My ex stopped paying child support 6 months ago and I don't know what to do. Can you help?" Simone smiled, already typing her response. "Yes. We can help. You're not alone anymore." Because that was the real ending, she realized. Not revenge or reconciliation, not perfect forgiveness or dramatic justice. Just the quiet, powerful act of showing up, for yourself, for others, for the hard work of building something true from the wreckage of pretty lies. The anniversary she'd never forget had destroyed her old life completely, and given her the chance to build a better one. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives become the catalysts for our greatest transformations. Have you ever experienced a devastating truth that ultimately set you free? Share your story in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Thanks for experiencing this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it.